Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and dear audience. On behalf of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, I welcome all of you to today's special webinar on Ukraine conflict. This is a very special day when we have witnessed unprovoked and unprecedented hostility towards the independent nation of Ukraine. Our heart goes out to all the Ukrainian people, those who are suffering this untold misery. We stand in solidarity with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin today's webinar, let me do the treaty recognition. Resilience Research Institute Canada is located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a plan. Today, what we'd like to do is to first introduce Darcia and Gary Senft from Winnipeg, Manitoba. They are advisors to Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, and they are very passionate about Ukrainian conflict. And also, most importantly, we are going to air the interview that we did with Honorable Member of Parliament of Ukraine, Sofia Fedina. And we are going to share her thoughts and her concepts of the conflict in a very brief moment. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me welcome Darcia Senft for her opening remarks of the webinar. Darcia, floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Kauser. Gary and I are so privileged to be here this evening with you. And we were so pleased yesterday to be able to participate in hearing from Sofia Fedina herself as she's underground, every now and again looking around her because there are bombs going off and shelling. Very scary times. She's very strongly devoted to the nation of Ukraine and its army, and that's actually what got her involved in politics in the first place. She's now a member of parliament representing the European Solidarity Party. She's also a professional singer. She's amazing. And a professor of international relations at the Ivan Franko Lviv National University. So she spent a lot of time, up until recently, commuting between Kiev and her hometown and constituency of Lviv. Just by way of background for how we came to know Sofia, back in 2006, I asked Gary if he would accompany me. I wanted to go back to Ukraine. I'd never been there, but you'll find a lot of Ukrainians in Canada and elsewhere say they want to go back to Ukraine because that's where our relatives came from. Both my Baba and Gigi, grandma and grandpa on my father's side, both came from little villages in Ukraine in the Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast, in a little village. And then my Guido, my Gigi, on my mom's side came from a little town called Shuparka, and a little bit further east. And so we went on this amazing adventure. But of course, although I can read Ukrainian, I don't really know what I'm reading. I know the Cyrillic alphabet from having sung in choirs for years, Ukrainian choirs. And so we needed a translator. When we got into the villages, we particularly needed some help. And we had 3 fantastic translators. And one of them, this was now going back 2006, was a very young woman named Sofia Fedina. And that's how we got to know her. She acted as our translator for part of our amazing trip. And she was so warm and just so passionate about Ukraine. We spent a whole afternoon singing Ukrainian folk songs together because I also sing and I'm involved with the Ukrainian choir. So music transcends everything. And we were able to communicate very well that way, for sure. But we kept in touch over the years, and we were proud that she went off and got her, I think it was her master's degree in international relations, became a professor, and then 3 years ago was asked to join this other party and became a member of parliament. So we've watched with pride as she's grown into an even more accomplished young woman, and a very brave and fierce young woman who is, you'll hear when you, of course, you were part of the interview, but everyone else will hear just how passionate she is about Ukraine's desire and need for independence, and the willingness of their own citizens to literally take up arms to see that that remains the case.
Thank you, Darcia, for the opening remarks and introducing, I would say definitely a resilient woman out there resisting with her people right on the ground. And it is a fascinating opportunity, dear audience, to share her interview this moment. So have a listen, and we are going to air the full length of her interview. So be with us for another 50 minutes when we air the whole length of the interview. And at the end, Darcia and I will come back again and have our closing remarks and close this session. So without further ado, let's hear what Honorable Member of the Parliament from Ukraine, Sofia Fedina, has to say. So without further ado, let me welcome Honorable Member of Parliament, Sofia Fedina from Ukraine. Sofia, how are you doing?
Thank you. We are doing quite fine. Just right after the meeting of the Parliament, extraordinary meeting of the Parliament, that was quite in a secret circumstances, but Ukrainian Parliament today adopted so many laws that will help us to counter Moscow aggression. And this is a background for, I think, very important changes in the future for Ukraine. So I'm still happy now we have information about the 10 columns approaching Kyiv right now. And also the airborne forces of Moscow Federation are trying to get into the Kyiv circle, but our army is trying to do everything possible to resist. So quite fruitful day today.
Thank you so much. It's very happy to know. And we are absolutely confident that the way the resilience has been forming within your people and led by the president, it is absolutely impressive. So, Sofia, we would like to know more about the situation on the ground. What do you see going to happen in the next couple of days, and how you are preparing and leading your people right in Ukraine?
It's hard to predict what will be in the next several days. I only hope that our army will do everything to kick off Moscow army from Ukraine. That is the most important part, to get peace at least. But I think I'll make some small markers of what is going on. First of all, we have to remember that this war had not started on the 24th of February. This is the war that started on the 20th of February 2014. 8 years ago. And that is a very important point, because to my personal point of view, and actually the majority of members of parliament also agree to that, nowadays they agree because they have seen the invasion, that the moment when Moscow in 2014 annexed Crimea and then occupied the territories of Donbass, it got no punishment actually. Many Western partners, especially European Union partners, they were deeply disturbed while our people were killed, while our territory was annexed and occupied. But actually, in international context, Moscow Federation got no punishment. But actually, we have to understand and to remember clearly that with the invasion into Ukraine in 2014, Moscow ruined the existent at that time system of international security. That system that had been established after the Second World War. So that meant that some drastic changes in international environment will start. The second point, Moscow Federation in 2014 breached the international law. And as it got no punishment, it was created a precedent that first, it can do everything it wants and nothing is going to happen. And the second, that every country that wants to breach the law, in comparison with the first example, it also will get no punishment for that. So everyone can breach the law and anyone can do everything. And that made a basis for the situation when Moscow Federation started to use the means of democratic world against democratic world. Unfortunately, we've seen that very clearly in the United Nations, when the country that is infringing all the possible laws had a veto vote in the Security Council. The country that starts the wars, that kills people, it has a place and a say in this Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, in the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE, and then it was trying to impose its own rules, claiming that Ukraine is doing something wrong. And I think that these 8 years of no really effective sanctions, no massive support for Ukrainian army, no massive counteraction to Moscow Federation, made a situation when Putin understood that no one cares about Ukraine, so I can do what I want to do. On the other hand, the second point is that the intelligence of the United States, of the United Kingdom, and our partners for 5 months were informing about what is going to happen, and all this mounting of troops around Ukraine, it was more than a threat and more than a sign, at least to Ukrainian government, to understand that we have to get prepared. Unfortunately, the official position of the ruling majority was that nothing happens. Putin is not going to invade. We will negotiate it. Nothing happens until even 2 weeks ago, they were not voting for giving more money for the army. That was a big problem. No one cared that the intelligence of all the world was crying the war is going to start. But we'll resolve that question with our own government later after we get our victory. The third point, the West was threatening Moscow Federation that we are going to impose more and more sanctions if you dare to invade. And I was telling all the time, it's bullshit. Sorry, it's not like a parliamentary word, but it's the simplest word I can describe what is going on. If they're gonna invade, oh my God, they invaded in 2014. So that was the point. And if you see mounting troops, you should impose sanctions. You should stop it in advance. It's very good that they impose sanctions right now, but we having battles all over the Ukraine. We have invasion all over Ukraine. We have many people killed. We have children attacked. We have civilian infrastructure bombed. And I think these sanctions are too late to stop the war, but better late than never, so we can say. The fourth point. I think that Putin is not going to stop. And we have to stop him in some way. For example, tomorrow is the 5th of March, the day when Stalin was liquidated. I think that for Putin is very nice and symbolic a day to liquidate himself as well, because actually he has no way out of what he had done. He stepped over all the possible red lines, and the last point that he said that he has, it's a nuclear bomb or nuclear usage of nuclear weapon, because I don't feel that he is one of the person who says, "Oh, okay, sorry, I was wrong, I'll step back." That's not of him. I think. A very important part of it is that maybe his own surrounding, his own oligarchs are going to liquidate him. And this process already started when the things they own, they are expropriated already by some European countries and some European security services and so on. It's a good start, but who knows how long it's gonna last. Putin, we knew earlier, he was a person who was counting all the pros and cons, who was trying to find out the best way for him and for his country. Putin, we see right now, it's a mad terrorist who does not care about anything. He does not care about his own people. Moscow Federation citizens are going to have big problems. They are already having problems. And as we joke here in Ukraine, you wanted to return to the Stone Age, you return. And it's what is okay with you because you supported Putin for so long time, and you support him even now by posting videos that our soldiers are going to kill Ukrainians. Hooray, hooray, hooray. It's inapplicable in the modern and the civilized world. Next point. No one united Ukraine so much as Vladimir Putin did. His first invasion made people to review the concept of neutrality. And if in 2014, when he invaded first time Ukraine, we were a neutral country and support for NATO was like 10%, no more, primarily Western Ukraine. Nowadays, according to yesterday's polls, more than 82% of Ukrainians support Euro-Atlantic integration. It's unbelievable, and I think none of NATO countries had such a support for NATO integration when they were joining the alliance. And furthermore, approximately 96% of people are eager to join the European Union. I remember when I was in the European Youth Parliament at the beginning of 2000, and we were promoting these questions, and we had total obstruction, actually. And nowadays, Putin's invasion made people to change their views. This is the other dimension of the same union created by Putin is that if even in 2013, 2014, during the Revolution of Dignity, during the beginning of the First War, it was like some people were supporting our fight for independence. Some people said it's better to be with Moscow Federation and so on. Nowadays, it's very hard to find any person in Ukraine who supports Moscow Federation. Russian-speaking people from pro-Russian, pro-Moscow regions of Ukraine, they are screaming in Russian language. We don't want Russian army here. We don't want Russia. We don't want to be with Putin. They scream in Russian language. They scream, "We are Ukraine. We are Ukraine." Especially those amazing videos from the city of Berdyansk on the south of Ukraine. It's oh my God! It's I think Kherson region. They thought, Moscow army thought that everyone will welcome them with flags, with like bread and butter in Ukrainian tradition, but no one did it. Actually, instead, the mayor did, but he is, I think, under arrest right now. And the people made the occupants to go away without weapon. They were making the Moscow soldiers to go away. And Putin really united Ukrainians. So there are no left bank river, right bank river of Ukraine. There are no Russian-speaking, Ukrainian-speaking. Everyone is Ukraine. Everyone is against Putin. And for Ukraine's future, actually, it's very good. And today we in the parliament, we voted several very important laws, project of laws. One of them is how to counter collaborationism. So how to counter and how to punish all those people who help the aggressor. Actually, we wanted this for 8 years, and we were lobbying this for 8 years. A year, this project was in the parliament just under a stack of papers. But today it was finally voted, and it's very important. Now we can get rid of pro-Moscow parties, for example, and it will be the beginning. The second one, we voted about the expropriation of all the property of Moscow Federation in Ukraine and all the property that belongs to the citizens of Moscow Federation. That means that everything they had, we take to our treasury, and actually that will go to the army of Ukraine and to the territorial defense. That is a very important thing, and I'm very anxious to hear when they take over the churches of Moscow Patriarchy, when they take over churches that belong to the so-called lavras, the monasteries. The majority of them, they were built by Ukrainian Catholic Church, but then they were expropriated by Moscow priests. And we know that in many churches, Moscow churches in Ukraine, the airborne forces of Moscow are being situated, and the Moscow priests, they give weapon to the Moscow soldiers. So it's very important project of law that had been voted today, and the president should sign them immediately. Another thing that we voted about countering information warfare of Moscow Federation and the criminal responsibility for helping the aggressor in informational sphere. then we have many others, but these I think are unprecedentedly important for Ukraine right today. And the last point before maybe ask questions, because I can talk hours and hours, we have a total resistance, and that's unbelievable. As I joke, every brick, every flower, every cat, and every dog are eager to kill Moscow soldiers who came here. And we have a very famous joke today that Moscow soldiers, please put some seeds in your pockets. So when you're dead in Ukrainian ground, you'll definitely will give some crops, because otherwise you're useless. So the resistance, we can divide it into several dimensions. First, we have army, Ukrainian army, and the queues to the military regiments in different states of Ukraine are unbelievable.
Mhm.
Every day, every hour, more and more soldiers are coming. Then a lot of veterans are returning from abroad. Many of them, after 4 or 5 years of war, they went abroad to make some money because the salary was not enough. And now a lot of people, soldiers I took care of, they return like 600-700 kilometers from abroad just to go directly to the war zone. Then we have mobilization, and there is a big problem because the military regiments, they do not have enough people to do all the stuff, to put all the documents, and we do not have enough weapon even for all the willing to protect Ukraine. But by the way, we voted today also the right of every civilian with official weapon to protect the country and themselves. So before that, it was a big discussion where civilians need weapon or not. Now everyone has a right to kill occupants. And that is the basic position. Then we have territorial defense forces. And these are the regiments, and these are the groups that are being formed in every different region of Ukraine. They sign a contract. They belong to Ukrainian army, but they are working just in this definite region in Ukraine they signed a contract with. So actually they protect the country on the spot against different subversion groups, against some provocators and so on. Then we have volunteer groups. They are a part of national resistance, and now they are also given a right to have a weapon and to organize by themselves, but having contact with the army. But then we have a resistance of people. And I think you have seen these videos when in different villages, different small cities, they come against tanks. They try to stop them on the roads. The people, women are trying to stop tanks, and in many situations, they are being stopped because Moscow soldiers are shocked that this is not army. These are people without no weapon. And but they stop them, and no one wants them here. I think Moscow propaganda was very strong even to soldiers because they were told that Ukrainian people want to be liberated, but no one wants to see them here. And they are really, how to say it properly, demoralized because no one cares about them. And we have a very good flash mob when people take Moscow soldiers into prison, especially these are young men. And then they are given a phone, they call back home, and they tell their moms, especially moms, what is going on here. And the main phrase is, "Mom, please come and take me back home. And please tell everyone that it's not a peacekeeping operation, that is a full invasion into Ukraine, and that the Putin makes us to kill civilians." And we already made a positioning that every mother can come and take her son back home. But they have to come to Ukraine through ruined regions to see what their sons did to Ukraine. And I think it's a very strong position because at least they will be able to witness all the harm, all the consequences of the invasion. And then we have a lot of volunteer groups, especially right now I came to Kiev from Lviv, and in Lviv national hub, that has been overflown with different type of aid, starting from military aid, finishing with medication and even clothes for people who became refugees. And one more important thing, that in 2018, we voted that the foreign soldiers can come and sign contract with Ukrainian army. Furthermore, right now, President Zelensky, he announced the creation of International Legion. So the French Legion we have in France, and we have international one. And up to this moment, 16,000 international soldiers applied to come to Ukraine to fight together with Ukrainians. And I think it's very important point, because it's like, it's not only that world unites in sanctions, but world unites in countering physically. If the countries cannot send their troops because it might be perceived as a declaration of war, the volunteers can come. And they do this, and they are really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Honorable Member of the Parliament. It's such a story, such a narrative that you described, and we see the resilience already built up, and the way you described the resistance, and we are getting hopeful here. And just before welcoming Darcy Ascent to our discussion, I just wanted to comment on a fact that we do, from outside, we are not in your area, but we do see that the Russian Federation, I think, possibly made a huge mistake in underestimating the Ukrainian resistance, which is gaining momentum now. And I think all the credit goes to your leadership and, of course, President Zelensky's leadership. And we deeply appreciate that it's going to work out, and we are in solidarity. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Darcy Ascent.
May I just comment? I promise not to criticize the president, so I will be until the victory. So I'll be very delicate. But I would say that there is no his leadership. He is doing his job, and he has finally to do something we elected him for, the people elected him for. The leadership is our military heroes who returned to General Staff of Ukrainian Army. The leadership is in national resistance, the territorial defense, and all these people. And I do not like the idea to name the street in Ottawa with the name of Zelensky. I would like it to be named the Heroes of Ukraine, as it was done actually, if I'm not mistaken, in Poland or in Vilnius. I do not like the T-shirts with Captain Zelensky as in Captain America, because we already have more than 15 heroes of Ukraine who gave their lives to save Ukrainian people. For a long time, Zelensky was afraid of his own army. I appreciate that today he's telling very right things. I'm not sure whether he feels that, but I appreciate that he had not escaped. But I would say the main leadership is Ukrainian army, who was built by Ukrainian people in the last 8 years.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And this is absolutely true. And we do understand that it's the people's resistance, which is very important and which is going to make the difference. And we are with your comments. We will support your comments. Darcy Ascent now, let's welcome her into the discussion. Darcy.
First of all, Sophia, I'm so pleased to see you here today. We've been texting a little bit back and forth, and just to see that you are, yes, you're in a bomb shelter, but I can see you and speak with you at the moment. You're safe. We're so relieved for that. And thank you for all of this amazing information. You just had your session today, so we're receiving this as quickly, faster than even we could get on Twitter or news services. So we really appreciate the up to the moment reporting that you're giving to us. I'm hearing you loud and clear, and that's why I wanted you to have a platform to speak and get the word out that the heroes of Ukraine, it's the army. I'd like to say to you, no, I think the heroes of Ukraine are everybody, like the whole population. It's you as the parliament, it's the army who's been so brave, it's the volunteers now who are stepping forward. and whatever differences there may be between the political parties and your the president, he has become a force that has helped unite the West on your behalf. So, and that's very important, because without that, I'm not sure that there would have been as much of the sanctions and the movement and everyone walking out of the United Nations when the Russian representative was speaking. I don't know if you've seen that video.
I've seen that. I like that so much. As I understand that this diplomatic movement was totally not diplomatic, and that was amazing.
Amazing, very powerful. So I think you're correct, and I agree that I think Putin has united the country as it has never been united before. But before that, I know from being my Ukrainian roots, the Ukrainian people are proud.
So maybe I'll just
Thank you so much for that. Yes, Garrison, please come in to the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Sophia, we do want to thank you, as Darcia said, for us, you're bringing the human face, to this audience. You are there and you have worked, tirelessly for this. We'd like you to know that our area that we live in has a lot of Ukrainian heritage people. In my province alone, there's 180,000. We're doing little things that we can. We took Russian vodka off our liquor commission shelves. Our hockey teams, which are wonderful teams, a Ukrainian choir, Husli, sang the not just the Canadian national anthem, but the Ukrainian national anthem. And there are all kinds of efforts to show solidarity. There will be funds flowing for relief and other things that we can do. Consideration will be given, I'm sure, on the refugee side to work with it. And so your voice will be heard by Canadians who will, be in solidarity with you. And why? Because the actions of Putin are unbridled aggression. They are attacks on the rule of law. And if they aren't stopped, where does it stop? So you said a very important thing. You said he won't stop. So as an example, the Belarusian president had a map on the wall when he was doing something that was made public. And there was an indication on that map that Moldova would be considered in this aggression. So can you just speak for a second on, do you see him, firstly, the Ukrainians are slowing him, if not stopping him, every day. But were he successful, his next step would be a further step. Would that be the case in your opinion?
Yesterday, they spread a map of Ukraine. It was informational warfare as well, in which all the regions that are being under attack now were shown as taken over the Moscow control, that the Moscow totally controls it. Actually, I have this map, Darcy, you can see it later on my Facebook page. And then there is a map that is real now. And these regions are not taken over by Moscow army, but there is just the lines they got into, but sometimes they came through the city, sometimes they put the Moscow flag, but they do not control all these cities and towns. And that is very important, first thing. Second, our soldiers took over several regiments that were responsible for the planning of the operations. And they got documents, and the documents had two scenarios. One scenario was that they started war on invasion on the 24th of February, and on the 26th, they planned already to take over Kyiv. They never managed to do this up till now as well. Then there was a plan that in 9 days, there might be like the last battles for Ukraine, because the soldiers, they were promised that on the 3rd, 4th of March, they will be sent home, that the operation will be over. And then the other document says that the longest possible operation should last 15 days. So they thought that Ukraine maximum would survive 15 days. Up till now, the fake republics, so-called LNR and DNR, they wanted to expand their territory to the administrative border of the region. They managed in these 8 days to take over only one village. All the other cities of Ukraine and towns are under Ukrainian control. So it will be very hard to move on. But you were totally right. And we have to understand that there's Transnistria in Moldova, Abkhazia and Ossetia in Georgia. We have Syrian conflict. We have there is Kaliningrad of Germany. There is Karelia taken from Finland. There are northern islands taken from Japan. And there are a lot of places where Moscow Federation just expropriated the property, that just conquered what does not belong to it. And I think it might want to make more control over the territories that lead to these occupied territories. So he might move on. But on the other hand, Putin was threatening also the closest partners of Ukraine. These are Baltic countries that were one of the first to tell the full scale of Moscow aggression. And they were not deeply disturbed. From the very first moment they were helping Ukraine. And there's Poland, of course, that is one of the greatest humanitarian military hubs today to help Ukraine. These are United States, and that Putin already asked to check and to make ready the rocket system. It's a bit stressing. And privately, not as a parliamentarian, but privately, I think that it would be much better not to fight against Putin on the territory of Ukraine, but it would be better to fight against him on the territory of Moscow Federation. Doing stoppage of infrastructure, doing some peacekeeping actions, so to say, because it's very important for him not to get the possibility to spread out. Then we have a region of the Black Sea, and it's very important for the security, as there are several NATO members who are on the Black Sea region, for example, Turkey. But we know that Putin has nuclear weapon, or at least nuclear weapon launchers in Crimean Peninsula. And we also have to take this into account. So 8 years of being deeply disturbed led Putin to be more and more ready. And in these years, he gathered more than $640 billion of gold and currency reserves, and this will let him to survive not one day, but maybe much more. So that is a question for all the world to unite in all the possible dimensions. But for us, what is important? Once again, as I mentioned, we do not want anyone to fight for us. We are ready to fight, but we need, on the one hand, we need weapon, and really a lot of weapon. And on the other hand, we need several steps of international community. The first step is to protect civilians. And that's the main mechanism to do that, is no-fly zone. Recently, we had a meeting with Canadian parliamentarians from different regions, and they say that that might be seen as a declarance of war to Moscow Federation. And I say that in a hybrid times of hybrid wars, we have to see this from different other perspectives. We want to protect civilians. Yes, yes. Civilians are suffered from air attacks. Yes. What no-fly zone does? It closes the sky, and if any rocket or plane are flying over the Ukrainian territory, not Moscow territory, Ukrainian, it would be liquidated over the Ukrainian territory. So that goes only to Ukrainian territory. It's not a threat to Moscow. Then we have to start the information campaign so that the defense of civilians cannot ever be seen as a declarance of war. I think that if we start with information campaign, it helps a lot. On the other hand, the equipment to close the sky is already being submitted to Ukraine. And the more we have this equipment, then maybe we do not need to use the equipment of Poland or of the United States. This is the question, how the countries can submit all these anti-aircraft attack complexes to Ukraine. Later on, we'll use them by ourselves. One more important point is peacekeepers to come to Ukraine. We demanded that since 2015. And every time we were told that it's impossible because Moscow has veto vote and blah, blah, blah. But as I've already heard, we have a mechanism when GA can vote for that. And yesterday, there was unprecedented support of Ukraine in the Moscow aggression, 141 countries. And only 5 countries were against. The countries of the Moscow Federation, Belarus, Syria, Northern Korea, and one more African country. Actually, this is unbelievable support.
Eritrea.
Eritrea, yeah, thank you. And that is a question that we need to get the peacekeepers. It's very important to control the territory and to help Ukrainian people. Next point, we've got different strange message from the Red Cross that they are not going to come to the war zone to help Ukrainian people. Red Cross was created to help people in the very hard circumstances. And it's unprecedented that they said that they are not going to do that. So there's a question. We have to question a Red Cross to do what they are to do. But on the other hand, we need the help of all the doctors of goodwill. There is no enough doctors. There is no enough operation places. There is no enough medical aid, medicine, especially blood clots, especially antibiotics, especially anti-burn stuff, gemostatic stuff, and also these tourniquets with which you stop the blood flow. We have total absence of these tourniquets. So we ask them from every country, from any possible direction, because every soldier needs to have at least 2 of them, but the majority of soldiers have none at all. And we need doctors who will be not afraid to come closer, the possible closer to the war zones and to help wounded people, especially people, civilians. Yes, of course, it's very scary when it's air attack, but Ukrainians had shown that we are not scared and we will resist till the victory. So we just need the backing. And the last but not least is making sanctions more harmful. I've heard that, for example, maybe you have seen that video. It's an amazing video by Georgian vessel who brings fuel. They refuse to give fuel to the Moscow ship. And when the Moscow people asked, but we need fuel, the Georgians suggested that they should do like this and to flow with their own hands. But actually, if Moscow Federation citizens' cars will not be submitted with fuel, it will be perfect all over the world. If they cannot use their card, it will be perfect. If they cannot go to any other country, it will be perfect. Maybe it will be some pushing for themselves to make Putin go away, or maybe to liquidate Putin, or maybe to change it, whatever. It's up to them what to do, but they have also, they have to want to change their own country as well. But the more sanctions are going, and the more overwhelming sanctions are, it will be much more helpful. And yesterday, several yachts were taken from billionaires, from Moscow billionaires. And I think it's a very good step. I think all the property of Moscow Federation abroad might be taken over by these countries where it is registered. They may, with this money, they may help the Ukrainian army. They may do information warfare against Moscow Federation. They can help people, refugees who had to go from Ukraine. But I think we have a very high time to stop Putin and to stop Moscow Federation as an entity. I know that these talks are not very popular, but Darcia and Gary know it very well. I was telling them this story while we were here in Ukraine. Moscow Federation is a historical thief. When Ukraine was the largest empire of Europe, they never existed. There was a swamp. Later on, they tried to take over our history. They pretend that Kiev is a background of Moscow Federation. It had never been. Moscow Federation, it's an artificial entity. They say that we are one nation, but we have never been, because they have their roots from Mongols and Tatars. We are Slavic. They pretend that Ukrainian language is artificial language and the basic had ever been Moscow language, but it's not true, because these are totally different languages with different background. They had stolen our faith at the end of the 16th century. They had stolen our territories. They had stolen our history. They had stolen many Ukrainians whom they named like the greatest people of Moscow Federation history. They now are stealing our territories and they want to steal our future. In 2014, Ukraine started to take it back. Step by step, we returned our faith by receiving Tomos. We renewed the rights of Ukrainian language. We renew and we make a recovery of Ukrainian history, the real history, not the Soviet propaganda. We take over our economic independence and so on. And to my point of view, this battle, and it's so bloodshed battle, it's because Moscow Federation understands if we take back everything, it has nothing left. And so it will not exist at all. So this is a war for their own existence. And we have to kill this Hydra because like in this Greek mythology, you cut one head and three more appear, like two heads of the Moscow chicken on the flag. And we have to cut it down till the very bottom. And then I think if Moscow people want to have their own country, they will have a democratic choice. If not, they have like more than 80 subjects of federation who can become independent, and it will be their own land. But we totally understand that this battle is against democracy. It's battle against peace, against human rights, because Moscow Federation is an entity that is based on totalitarian concentration camp regime.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member of the Parliament. Darcia, do you have last words before I request the Honorable Member of the Parliament to conclude?
As a member of the legal profession, and Gary is a retired lawyer now, what he was saying earlier about the rule of law, that how critical the rule of law is for the ongoing existence of people and democracies. You can't keep undercutting the rule of law and, as you say, ignoring it or just being concerned, deeply concerned, or sometimes people say thoughts and prayers. Well, thoughts and prayers aren't enough. And peacekeeping, absolutely. Sometimes before you can get to the peacekeeping, you have to do what basically you need, just basically to survive and to push back.
Enforcement.
Exactly. But they're all pieces taken together. They're all pieces of what's needed for a peaceful existence, democracy, human rights, as you say. I'm wearing one of my Ukrainian shawls in solidarity. The Ukrainian National Congress has been amazing with fundraisers, millions of dollars raised. I can go to my own Ukrainian credit union and click a button, donate here, and they're getting lots of money that way. Everything's going to Ukraine. So if we can pass the message back to you to take to people there, as Gary said, from Manitoba, there is more than closer to 200,000, I think. Ukrainians, people are hurting. We're having trouble sleeping. Spread that word that we are losing sleep over what you're going through. And we are with you.
And we definitely feel that you are with us. We definitely feel all the support that we can get, all the messages, all the flags on avatars in social media. and it's very important. And I think that Ukraine is top news everywhere. And someone said that Kiev is the capital of freedom today. So
Yes.
it's a capital. The freedom is a capital, and the Kiev as a capital of freedom is the capital for everyone today.
Yes.
And the symbol of, the blue and the yellow colors are on, the CN Tower in Toronto, the Eiffel Tower, New York, Times Square, literally everywhere, that freedom is cherished, and people are realizing, but we still have to figure out how to help further and deeper. So people here will be trying to understand. You've raised some very important points. So, relief efforts, blood supplies, medical supplies, anything that, can help in that regard. And hopefully you will get, more and more support as we go. The fact that you are so resilient is an inspiration to everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, Darcia and Gary Sant. Honorable Member of the Parliament, Sofia Sadiana, with us. So we are going to wrap up our discussion with you, and we hope to speak with you again, and we pray for your safety and well-being. But before we conclude, Honorable Member of the Parliament, can you share your hopes and fears for the future? You, although alluded to some of your worries about the invasion and the end state of Mr. Putin here, but for general audience, what are your hopes and fears for the future?
I hope that we'll manage not only to survive as a country, but we'll manage to win this war. Because if it becomes the further unfrozen conflict, I would not think that the world will survive it. We cannot let it last like this. We cannot stop the terrorists. Otherwise, it will be the end of the existing world order. The second thing, I hope that we'll get the possibility to help all those cities that were destroyed by Putin. And that would be the question, I think, not only of Ukraine, but by the international community, to build new cities and to restore the faith of those people in humanity. I also hope that Ukrainian government and Ukrainian officials, they will drastically change their views. I know many of them were shocked with this aggression because they have never expected it from Moscow Federation, and they were totally pro-Russian. But that should start a new era of Ukrainians' existence. And when Johar Dudayev, the leader of Ичкерия nation, he said that the real sunrise of freedom will come from Ukraine. Maybe this is the time.
Sofia, maybe I'm going to ask you one question that's a bit difficult, but the aggression, from Putin seems to almost be a personal ambition and aggression. And as you've mentioned, a lot of the young men coming into your country don't even understand what the heck they're doing there. And the mothers at home, the wives, everyone there has got to understand that exactly what you're saying. If you want to be free in the future, have a life, have a rule of order, reduce corruption, the stand that Ukraine takes is leading the world. And are you able to sort of have a word for the people back in Russia to help them understand that and basically surrender or step back, go back home? How would you try to help them understand that?
Gary, there are a lot of people in Ukraine who are trying to persuade them. And there are many soldiers that are being in prison. They are sending back messages back home that we should stop it, we should stop it. But I personally do not believe in them. Maybe in these 8 years, I lost too many soldiers I took care of. maybe because of my family story, I don't believe in them. In Ukraine, when someone is beaten by enemy, by aggressor, more and more Ukrainians will join and will make them back off. In Moscow Federation, have you seen the protests recently?
Yes.
When 200 people were escaping from one policeman, when people were protesting on their knees, they live in the terrorist country and they need their own power, internal and physical and military, to get rid of Putin. But they like him. Unfortunately, this is a country that was created in the concept that Tsar, the ruler, is good. All the others might be bad, but Tsar is good. And you have to be patient, and maybe Tsar will do something good for you. So unfortunately, me personally, I do not believe in that. And I do everything to make my army strong. I'm happy there are a lot of people who still trust in citizens of Moscow Federation, and they are doing their best to persuade them. But when I see the airborne forces or special operation forces or Chechnya killers who are coming here, you cannot talk with them. You have to exterminate them, otherwise they will exterminate you. And that is the point. Therefore, I think that except of military power of Ukraine, the absolute package of sanctions is the most peaceful way to make Moscow Federation citizens at least to think that something is wrong.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Very quickly, Kazer, you mentioned sanctions against the oligarchs and the seizing of assets. That is going on as we speak. And there was a wonderfully 157-foot yacht that was being scuttled. You heard that story. So the resistance is there, and people are strong. And I would like to just conclude by saying,
Gary, have you heard that one of the former Moscow oligarchs who live, I think, in the United States, nominated a prize of $1 million for the head of Putin?
Wow.
I think that if 8 years ago we implement such blocking sanctions for oligarchs around Putin, for his closest surrounding, maybe they would stop him. They would have stopped him much earlier, before the open war of such extent started.
Thank you. And I'm going to conclude, Kazer, just by saying your voice is very important, Sophia, and we're hearing it, and we thank you for it, and we'll try to make it resonate. The audience doesn't know that you're actually a wonderful singer, and it'll.
Today on my Facebook page, I'm going to download the link to my military album with the songs that I've written in the last years during the war in Ukraine. And I will make it downloadable for everyone to use and to have like backing of our efforts to get the strength from the songs for our victory as well.
So thank you so much for that, Sophia. And I would say just keep singing and try to keep the people singing, even in this desperate moment. It brings us together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And take care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care.
Absolutely. And Honorable Member of the Parliament, on behalf of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, we deeply appreciate your time, your insights, and just concluding here, we are going to air it very soon, and we'll be in touch with you when this will be aired. And the audience, the Honorable Member of the Parliament is a brilliant singer, as Gary just mentioned. Please do follow her in Twitter and in her Facebook, and support the Ukrainian people in their existential fight against invader Russia. And we have heard, quite succinctly from the Member of the Parliament what she wants. And I hope from our platform, this message goes out rapidly, and we build momentum to stop this unnecessary and absolutely brutal war against Ukrainian people. And we wish her safety, her well-being. And we also wish, honorable members of parliament, you remain so resilient and so spirited for the rest of your struggle. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Слава Україні.
Bye.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience, we just heard the recorded interview of Honorable Member of the Parliament, Sofia Fedina, that and she elaborated the current situation and what the nation actually want. Before I formally conclude, let me go back to Darcia Sen for her concluding remarks in this session. Darcia.
Thank you, Kauser. I just have a couple of things to say, and then I think I'll pass it on to Gary to say a couple of quick remarks. Just being able to watch this just was recorded yesterday, and being able to listen to it a second time was as informative for us, because Sophia had so much information. It was so dense. She is so capable as a speaker and so thorough that it was great to have an opportunity to hear all of her points outlined again. We continue to look for ways to help. We know some doctors. I'm going to see if there's any way we can get a hold of the Doctors Without Borders. She mentioned some issues with concern about stepping into the war zone, maybe with Red Cross. So we've got to try to see if we can help with that. We've passed on the message, actually. Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, just yesterday, right after our interview, asked for a summary of what was said, and we were able to give her some key points: that they needed peacekeepers, that they needed more weapons, that they needed medical supplies, tourniquets, anti-burn gel, antibiotics, etc. So that was very timely. So I want to thank you, Kauser, for setting everything up so quickly, staying up till all hours in the middle of the night because of the time change to liaise back and forth with Sophia. So thank you. And Gary, if you've got anything else to say.
Thank you, Darcy. I would just like to conclude by thanking Dr. Kauser and the CRIC organization for being there. So allowing these dialogues to occur in all regions of the world where conflict is. And the important part of the name is conflict and resilience. And that's never been more important. And I think we're actually at an inflection point in world history here. This is not a skirmish. This is not a provoked war. This is a serious aggression and just a fundamental breach of rule of law. And so that will require significant thought. And what's making that resonate so much is the actual courage and resilience and resoluteness of the Ukrainian nation. They are an independent and sovereign nation, a democratic nation, a nation that I think we can all relate to, that affects us deeply in that way. I would just like to say that Sophia pointed out what's needed. She would love to see a no-fly zone. If the West can't help in some ways, they should just try to figure out other ways. You know, give them the planes; they will put pilots in them. Give them the Stinger, anti-aircraft, the Javelin, anti-tank. They need the equipment and they need it now. So anything that can be done to help them. You also heard the urgent appeal for medical supplies. And it's just difficult to hear that they need burn cream. Why is that? We know. So they need tourniquets. So all of these things. So I'll just conclude by, saying that Sophia represents women empowerment embodied, and anything we can do as Canadians to support her, I just strongly ask you to think about what thing, large or small, you can do and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Darcia, for helping us to arrange this platform and get these words out to greater audience what Ukrainians actually need at this moment in time. The audience, I would formally conclude, it is one of the webinars that we conclude in a different tone. And let me summarize very briefly what Honorable Member of the Parliament, Sofia Fedina, actually told us, and some of you, who are with us for last 55 minutes or so, you have rightly heard the needs at this point in time. But let me also share the idea that she was very clear in stating that past 8 years, what we mean by we, rest of the world, we were watching, we were kind of sitting just idly to watch when this invasion would occur. 8 years is pretty long time. And this is what she time and again mentioned, that why we have not acted as we are feeling now. And this might have been the moment which emboldened the Russian Federation to launch this brutal war, because there was an impunity in the air. There was no rule of law that international organizations, United Nations, or for that matter, coalition of willings, which went to war in Iraq without UN Security Council's explicit authorization. It never happened with Ukraine. And this is the possibly one of the saddest discovery from her discussion today. And also, dear audience, let us also talk about how to resolve this crisis immediately and without any waste of time, because in each hour, people are dying. And in this regard, let me quickly recap what the Geneva Convention actually says. According to Geneva Convention of War about the civilians, it is very clear that they cannot be attacked. They must be protected. They are not a target. About combatants, they must distinguish themselves from civilians in all military operations by wearing identifiable insignia and carrying out arms openly. About civilian infrastructure, this is schools, hospitals, civilian homes, water plants that supply clean water and electricity lines. Basically, everything that civilians need to go about their daily lives cannot be attacked. And just a reminder that in all these aspects, all the laws of international humanitarian and warfare has already been broken. And so it is time to think about intervention. You have heard a set of recommendations from the Honorable MP herself sitting in the ground. So let's think about how to end it quickly so that more lives are saved. And on the final thought, ladies and gentlemen, we are needing help. We need tourniquets. We need medical aids to be flown to Ukraine immediately. So if you know someone, please connect with us, Darcia and Gary and Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada. We will connect you with the persons or the agency who will ship those items immediately to Ukraine. And I will end by saying that warfare has happened over centuries in our human history. This war is absolutely unnecessary, as I said in the beginning, and unprovoked. This cannot be accepted in human society if we claim ourselves to be human. With this, let me end. And I also would like to invite all of you that we are going to have more episodes about Ukrainian conflict. We are going to invite experts about intervention, about humanitarian aid, and other aspects of the conflict. So please tune in and we'll meet each other again. Until then, please pray for Ukraine. Please be with Ukraine. Good night.